The descent was rough. Not like a controlled shuttle landing, more like garbage being dumped from orbit. The containment pod slammed into the ground with a metallic screech, its hull scraped raw by atmospheric entry. A locking mechanism failed with a shriek, and the hatch groaned open, spilling 6 disoriented passengers into the undergrowth. Juno rolled onto her hands and knees, coughing up the residue from cryostasis. The soil under her palms was dark and wet, rich with decay. Above her, a canopy of twisted branches swayed, their leaves broad and jagged-edged, like teeth. Rek was already on his feet. He'd pried a rusted bar from the wall of the drop pod and held it like a club. His face was lean, weathered by prison stints and bad planets. "Where are we?" Kiva asked, one eye still swollen from cryo-bruising. Her brother Darrow pulled her up. The twins were easy to spot. Same wiry frames, same alert, guarded stares. Marn stumbled out next. He wiped frost from his cheeks and stared at the sky, blinking hard. "That's not Earth," he said. No one bothered responding. Of course it wasn't. The last to emerge was Tessa. Quiet as ever, she simply looked around, registered everyone's position, and slung a length of conduit over her shoulder. A siren, distant and thin, echoed across the jungle. Not from the pod. That ship, the narrow spire, was already breaking atmo, abandoning them. The sound came from deeper in the trees, mechanical and precise. Juno turned toward it instinctively. Then came the voice, cold, unmistakably synthetic. "Participants, confirmed. Environment, active. You have 3 rotations. Evade, survive. No external intervention permitted." The trees went still. Rek gave a bitter laugh. 3 rotations? That's a countdown." "A game," Darrow muttered. "They dumped us into some kind of—" "Zoo?" Marn offered. "Trap?" "Trial," Tessa said softly. Juno scanned the undergrowth. The terrain looked almost designed for ambush. Raised roots, thick brush, small gullies just deep enough to break a leg in. She turned in place, counting her companions. 6 of them. No weapons, no rations, no gear except what little had survived the drop. Then something shifted in the shadows behind them. Not a sound, not a figure. Just the sense of space being wrong. Air that bent too easily. An outline barely discernible. "We're being watched," Kiva whispered. Juno locked eyes with Rek. He gave a curt nod. It had begun. They didn't sleep. Not really. As the jungle dimmed and the reddish sun dropped behind the ridgeline, the air thickened. Humid, clinging, alive with whispers that weren't voices but suggested shape and intent. The kind of noise that made silence dangerous. They took shelter in the remains of an old platform, half swallowed by vines. The metal was rusted and bowed, but it sat a meter off the ground and gave them a view of their surroundings, barely. Visibility was a luxury the jungle didn't offer. Rek stood watch first. He didn't volunteer. He simply said, "I'll take the edge," and crouched near the far corner with his pipe resting across his knees. Juno sat beside a narrow hole in the wall, staring into the trees. "We can't stay here long." "Who said anything about staying?" Marn said. He was shivering, either from cold or fear. "They're testing us. Watching what we'll do. We move, we expose ourselves. We sit still. We waste time." "What time?" Darrow asked. 3 rotations? That could be 3 days, or 3 hours. We don't even know if the sun works the same here." Juno turned to Kiva. "You noticed it first, how they watch. You think it's just one?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "No, it's coordinated, like trained wolves, only worse. Wolves don't play with their food." They ate what they could, processed ration paste from the emergency kits embedded in the pod walls, barely edible. But it was something. The darkness pressed closer. Tessa didn't speak. Not once since they landed. She just sat with her back to a broken support beam, her eyes never fully at rest. When Juno's eyes opened again, she realized she'd dozed off, Just minutes, maybe. Tessa was gone. No sound, no struggle, no scent of blood. Rex stood where she'd been. "She was here," he said flatly. I turned for 5 seconds. They searched the perimeter. Nothing. Just a torn edge of fabric snagged on bark. Marn muttered something about decoys, about how some species lure prey by disappearing, creating false security. "Don't do that," Kiva snapped. "Don't start talking like you're one of them." The rest of the night crawled by. At dawn, the silence broke. Darrow stood near the clearing's edge. He turned to speak, and something pulled him backward. Not a snarl, not a cry. Just the sudden rush of movement and a dragging sound that vanished into underbrush. They gave chase, but it was over in seconds. His trail ended in claw marks gouged into tree bark. Kiva dropped to her knees beside it, not crying, just breathing like she'd run 100 miles. They took him, just like that. Juno stared into the trees. The sun was rising. They were down to 4, and the hunt was just beginning. Morning on Cavern 9 didn't bring relief. It brought haze, thick and low, coating the forest floor like breath held too long. The trees loomed overhead, their branches interlocked, letting only slivers of light through. 4 remained. Juno walked ahead, machete-sized shard of pod metal in hand, hacked from a broken panel. She'd ground the edge against stone until it could cut vines in a single swing. It wasn't enough, but it made her feel less exposed. Behind her, Marn tied vine lengths between saplings, constructing a snare. His hands moved quickly, though not cleanly. He'd already sliced his thumb. Twice. "I studied predator-prey systems," he said, more to himself than anyone. "Some species simulate cries of wounded animals to attract others. Some imitate prey, others just wait. Forever. Until the food forgets its food." "We get it," Rek muttered, scanning the trees. "They're smarter than we are." Kiva moved last, her gaze flicking between shadows. She carried Darrow's jacket now, tied tight around her waist. No one asked her why. They stopped near a narrow gully, half covered by twisted roots. It provided cover from above and 3 natural exits. Marn called it a good choke point. They set the trap near the northern path, where movement was most likely to pass undetected. A single tensioned vine, a bent branch sharpened into a spike, and a counterweight to drive it through anything unfortunate enough to trigger it. Then they waited. And waited. Time bent in places like this. Minutes passed like hours. The jungle wasn't silent. It breathed with unfamiliar rhythm, full of chattering insects and low clicks that might have been animals or not. The trap triggered at dusk. Something snapped the wire. The spike shot forward and struck Marn. He fell backward, gurgling, the point jutting from his side like a misplaced rib. "No! No!" Juno dropped to her knees beside him. "It wasn't supposed to. Marn, stay with me." Blood poured through his fingers. His face slackened, his breath shallow and unsteady. He tried to speak. Only bubbles. It took minutes. Rex stood motionless, watching the tree line. "They didn't kill him," he said. "We did." Kiva looked away. "They let us do it." Later, as night crept over the gully, a shape passed by the edge of their vision. Silent, tall, angled like a man wrapped in armor made for motion, not protection. Its head turned toward them. Juno thought for a moment that it smiled. Then it vanished again. Kiva whispered, "They're not just hunters." Juno's hands were still sticky with blood. She didn't answer. She already knew. They moved at first light, silent and thin with hunger. The jungle had shifted again. Vines now hung lower, their edges lined with a fuzz that irritated the skin. Trees looked warped, bark peeling in strange, organized spirals. Juno didn't think it was natural decay. It was design. She kept her thoughts to herself. Rek spotted the entrance first, a narrow gap between 2 stone ridges, half covered in moss and ash-colored creepers. It was too regular in shape to be natural. "A shelter," he said. No, Kiva replied. A lure. Juno studied the ground. No tracks, no broken foliage. Still, something about the air changed as they approached. Heavier, drier, less dense with rot, as if the jungle itself ended at the threshold. They entered. Inside was a tunnel, the stone smooth, the walls slanted like folded paper. It narrowed for 30 meters before widening into a large chamber. Etchings covered every surface. Not writing exactly, but not art either. Raised lines that glowed faintly as they stepped closer, as if responding to heat or movement. Some curved like veins. Others resembled wire maps of something too large to grasp. Rek ran a hand over the patterns. Looks like a shrine. No, Juno said quietly. A scoreboard. At the center of the chamber stood a low pedestal. It was cracked but still intact. When Kiva stepped near, the wall markings rippled and new symbols surfaced. 6 human outlines. One by one they flickered. Tessa, Darrow, Marn. 3 remaining. 3 still moving. Then, behind those figures, more shapes appeared. Dozens, not human. Taller, longer limbs, some with branching arms like insect legs or serrated armor. Shapes that hadn't appeared yet in the forest above. Kiva backed away. This place, she said. It's part of the system. They track us here. Maybe they made this whole place. Juno looked again at the wall. The predator shapes weren't just numbers or records. They were watching. Somehow. You think they're above us? Rek asked. Controlling it? No, Juno said. I think they're inside the game too. Kiva frowned. Why would hunters build a shrine to themselves? Rek gave a bitter smile. Because it's not a shrine. It's a warning. From the ones who died before us. The wall responded again. This time, a single shape pulsed. One of the 3 remaining humans. Juno felt her spine stiffen. The figure dimmed, then went dark. Rek looked around. Who just... The chamber's air shifted again. A whisper passed through the stone. Not a sound, a sense of removal. And then there were 2. The exit tunnel led upward through a spiral of stone, its incline steep, its walls narrowing with each step. Juno's breath came shallow now, her limbs tight with fatigue, but her grip on the blade, her makeshift machete, never loosened. Rek climbed ahead of her, the weight of his silence pressing louder than footsteps. Neither spoke about what had happened in the chamber. They didn't need to. The wall had confirmed it. Kiva was gone. Not by ambush, not by trap. Something in that chamber had marked her, then taken her, without mess or drama, like erasure. Outside, the forest had changed again. Mist curled around roots like smoke. The air pulsed faintly, almost rhythmic, like it carried a heartbeat far too large to be theirs. High above, the clouds opened to reveal strange aerial paths, silver veins of drifting ships too fast to follow. They weren't alone anymore. They were expected. Rex stopped near a dead tree and crouched low. There, he said, across the rise. Juno followed his gaze. A figure stood 20 meters off. Broad-shouldered, long limbs, skin like charred bark with movement beneath it, layers adjusting, adapting. Its face was narrow and eyeless, but something behind its expression watched. It didn't move. Didn't rush, didn't hide. Juno stepped forward, slow and measured. The figure raised a clawed hand, but not as a threat. It was a gesture, an invitation. Rex scoffed. They want to see what we'll do next. They always did, Juno said, and she understood suddenly what this final game was. Not a pursuit, not a slaughter, an evaluation. Who adapts, who resists, who breaks. Behind her, Rek lifted his weapon. We make a stand, he said, a hint of something bitter but proud in his voice. No, Juno replied. He turned. What? I'm not giving them what they want. I'm walking out. He stared at her, then past her, as more shapes emerged from the trees. Not charging, just forming a line. observing. Juno dropped the blade, walked, alone. Rek didn't follow. When the shuttle descended, it did so without announcement. No lights, no doors opening, just a dark craft hovering above a hollow in the ground. She climbed aboard without resistance. No questions asked, no welcome offered. Inside, everything was silent, clean, cold. As the vessel lifted, Juno looked through the narrow viewport down at the jungle below. No sign of wreck, no signal, no other survivors. Just the deep, twisting green of a planet made for trials, and the eyes, always the eyes, still watching.